Hi, and welcome to another episode of United for a Healthy Stoughton. My name is Stephanie Patton, and I am the prevention coordinator for the town of Stoughton. And I am coming to you virtually today with two very special guests to talk about managing back to school stress. So parents, this one's for you. So today I have with me Amy Saraiva, who is the assistant administrator for special education at Stoughton Public Schools. And I also have with me Danielle Gallan, who is the supervisor of health services at Stoughton Public Schools. And so today we're going to have a discussion about really how we can try to make this back to school time be the most possible positive time that we can for our students. Going back to school is a really big deal. It's an important transition that happens every year. This year is going to look a little different. And so we wanted to share some tips and strategies with all of you. This is one of the reasons we feel like this is really connected to our prevention work is because, these opportunities to build resiliency with our students, to build connections, to support them really are some of the things that really protect them from other risky behaviors down the road, whether your students are young or whether they're older. So this is a really important topic, and I'm so excited to have both Amy and Danielle with me today. So welcome, ladies. We're going to kick off by talking a little bit about the culture that the public schools are really working very hard to create for our students coming back this fall. They're coming back next week as we record this show. So Amy, do you want to start us off talking about that a little bit?
Sure, thank you. So one of the great parts about my job is I do get to travel to all the buildings and jump in at all the meetings so I can hear a lot of the different staff perspectives. And I think one thing that is really resonating is they are trying very hard to create a very welcoming back environment. Many of them have not seen these students in over 6 months. So the first couple of weeks, we're really trying to prioritize on the relationship building and how important that's going to be for this upcoming school year. And then I think in addition to the relationship building, one of maybe if we were to be looking for a silver lining, so to speak, towards everything, a lot of our students are really for the first time getting a firsthand experience in the importance of resiliency and understanding that when something doesn't go as planned or when we're facing some adversity, many of us are having the opportunity as the adults to model how we can adapt, how we can be flexible, how we can still keep our end goals in sight, which is an education, and how we can come together as a community, as staff to figure out new ways to really help the students get to that end point for them. So I think really the relationship building, but also the resiliency is what you're really going to hear, possibly even your children coming home talking about, that no matter what is thrown at them, we can still persevere, we can still push through, we can still find other ways to make things happen.
Great, thanks. Danielle, do you want to jump in there as well?
Hi, Steph. So I really think Amy hit it right on the head with flexibility, right? And so we've had lots of disappointment with things being canceled, with not being able to go to school, with camps not running the way that they normally have run, with vacations being canceled, and really moving through those things that we look forward to, right? Like not being able to go away or see grandma or whatever it is, and having that flexibility and that resiliency to go, okay, it's all right, because we'll plan this for next year or for a couple of months from now when we can make the time for that, or when it's safe to be able to do it. So yeah, flexibility, resiliency. And I think Mr. Colantonio's sign says the only school supplies that we need are flexibility, patience, and grace, I believe is what it is. And it resonates strongly.
Great. I love that. I love that OMS sign. I think that's a great reminder for all of us. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I sit on the wellness committee with both Amy and Danielle, which is fantastic. And we had a conversation at one of our wellness meetings about sort of the challenges that now that families have been spending more time together, in the spring, we had this curveball. We all had these stay-at-home orders. And we had this big stressful thing that was new to all of us happening in all of our worlds. And so I think sometimes kids are overhearing more adult conversations, and we are forgetting about what that's like to sort of keep some of those things separate from kids. And Amy had some really great thoughts on this, so I'm going to toss this over to her.
Thank you. Yeah, so when we went down on lockdown there in March, so my own personal situation, I have 4 boys, ages 6 to 18. Very big age span differences in interests and everything. And that was probably the first time in a long time they were all forced to be in the same place for an extended period of time. And when you have teenagers, you know how fun that can be, coupled with a 6-year-old. So I will say that I'm imagining a lot of families found themselves in that position of just all of a sudden being around one another. And there were many times I would even have to remind even my older 2 sons when they would ask questions or that to be aware that their 6-year-old brother is there and he's hearing them, especially because perhaps they weren't loving the online Google Meets and they're, and I'm trying to explain to them, but we don't want the younger guy to have this frustration because he's really looking forward to the Google Meet at this Friday. So there was a little bit of that, but then I think even this summer it really extended. Like Danielle said, we personally had a vacation canceled. My oldest graduating high school, we had a big family trip to the Caribbean planned. So that was canceled. And then as time went on this summer and some of the restrictions lifted and some of the parents were able to start getting together, one of the biggest areas of concern was how are we all going to make this work this fall? Right. So similar to my 18-year-old, we have opinions on the fact that we have to make this work. And all of a sudden, there's childcare costs that weren't planned. There's childcare needs that weren't planned. There's all these different things. And I just noticed over the summer, while I may be speaking for different moms, there were so many times I would look over and one of our kids was listening. They were absolutely listening because I think as adults, we carry all this worry and concern about scheduling and financial and how we're going to do it, but we don't always realize that our kids are sensing something. So especially if you have, my number 3 is definitely a nosy Parker. So every time he got a chance, the ear was up, like, what are they saying? And I had to dial it back myself. And, I'm a big believer in whatever your home's opinion is of school, your child will carry the same opinion. So while you may be frustrated and you may be overwhelmed, if we're not careful, we can kind of set our own kids up for not the greatest day if they're going to walk in with not a flexible, open attitude to the change. And it's not that we aren't justified in all our concerns and constraints and frustrations as adults. This is unlike other times that we've ever experienced. But I do just think it's really important that when our kids get on that bus Monday at 9:14, that we are absolutely saying to them, this is going to be amazing. It's just different, but it's going to be awesome. And now, for some families are doing pods on their days home. Like, hey, would you ever be able to have just those 2 kiddos to yourself on a day with a tutor? Or would you ever be able to have grandma home 3 days a week? Or, just thinking how we're framing the change. But I think that's very challenging for all of us because we're human. And our initial reaction is our emotions to the situation. So it was just something that I noted more and more as the summer was going on and parents' emotions were heightening, that we needed to be just a little more, myself included, absolutely, just a little more aware of what we may be saying in front of them so that we're not setting them up to walk into school with an attitude of defeat before they even get here. Because the 2 days they are here, if they're choosing hybrid, are going to be great. Different, but they're going to be great. The teachers cannot wait to see them. They're so excited. Their friends can't wait to see them. And on those remote days, there might be challenges, but they're still there and they're still learning. And a lot of, again, the resiliency, there is the silver lining in everything we look at. So that was just like my thought on that area coming from my own personal experience.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think too, sometimes we, we'll say to parents, there are these adult worries that they're not for your kids, particularly for your younger kids, right? And so it's easier, I think, when we had more freedom out in the world to be interacting with adults in spaces where maybe our kids weren't with us, to have those conversations privately. And I think for some adults, those opportunities are more limited because we're with our families more, which can be really positive, but sometimes means that our kids are hearing things that we haven't really thought about. Now they're just with us so much, we aren't thinking about that so much. Danielle, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure. So I'll quote another very brilliant individual that we work with. So Dr. Marcus, in his opening statement to staff, he had stated that it's about the mindset. So saying that you're anxious or you're nervous about something and changing that mindset to say you're excited, because essentially it's the same. It's around the same feeling, but it's all in how you look at it. And instead of looking at how hard it may be, it's an adventure. And so we have to really get excited about this great adventure that we're doing something that none of us have ever done before. And we're going to figure it out day by day, week by week. And it's okay. We're all going to get there together.
I love that. So we're all on an adventure and we're all in it together, right? So it's an adventure none of us have ever had. So we'll be like Indiana Jones or something in this new space. That's actually a really good transition. I want to talk a little bit about some strategies and tips and tools and ideas that families can think about as they're, trying to think about ways to make this smoother. And so we know not everything's going to work for every family. There's no one size fits all, but I think there are some suggestions that you both have that I think could be useful to some families. So Danielle, why don't we start with you? What are some things that you think would be helpful for families to be thinking about?
So I think that one of the things that has taken the biggest hit in all of our lives, especially with young children, is that routine, or that sense of this is what my day is going to look like, and this is what my week is going to look like, and these are the things I have to look forward to. So really setting that routine for your family, whether it's this is now bedtime and this is, wake up time, making sure that your day is, that you're nourishing your body with healthy foods and lots of water. We have water filler stations. Joyce Husseini, our facilities director, has replaced the water fountains in the schools with water fillers, or water bottle fillers, so that bringing a reusable water bottle is great, so that kids can stay well hydrated. And so good nutrition, good sleep, setting a routine. I think those are just the basic foundations for setting ourselves up for success. And if you are not feeling well, stay home, call your school nurse. Please don't come to school. Our goal is for all of us to come back to school successfully. And the only way that we do that is not by toughing it out. So if somebody's sick, please stay home.
Great. Amy, what are some other things that you think about for families, or like in your own house, that as you're thinking about this transition back to school?
So for my boys, with 4 boys, it's Grand Central. Everyone's going different directions. My older 2 have jobs and they're in school, and there can be a lot of constants. But one thing I've had to learn over the years in general, having 4 boys at different stages, is finding a time or validating what's important to them. So they have very vast interests, music, sports, and different things. And I think it's important, to validate it, but I think in a time like now, it's also very important to make time for it. So I think I notice the best of my kids when they have a healthy routine, but when they're also outside. Like, that's just something that works for my boys. Over the summer, when you're coming off of virtual learning, sometimes it's hard to give up the screen time because I've just enforced it for 3 months and now I'm trying to pull it away. So I tried to find a couple of little things, and who would have thought, a $20 Razor scooter and a bike little ramp from Amazon, my 6-year-old's been thrilled. He's like going outside. It took away a lot of the let's shut it off. And I know that wouldn't work for everyone, but that worked for him. He can't ride a 2-wheeler yet. So I was trying to figure out a way to get him out there with the brothers. My other, the other older one was like, can you get me a basketball again? Our other one broke, but so I think for my kids, or for everyone's kids, it's kind of important to determine what their happiness comes from, and healthy happiness, and then trying a way to really find opportunities that are due, and not break the bank opportunities. We're not necessarily going to the Celtics anytime soon, but things that I can do for them that I know would make a big difference. I also got myself a bike, and I do not like riding a bike, but I got myself a bike because now my 9-year-old asks me to go bike riding. So I do think with the quarantine, I've had an opportunity to look at parenting through a slightly different lens. And I've been forced to spend more time with them on little things. But I have, like I said, like I'm a big silver lining person. The silver lining for me was there were things that I learned about them that I don't know if I would have otherwise, and that I've now been able to kind of build off of and slow down myself and start doing. So for my guys, healthy routines definitely involve some form of physical outlet. It just does. You know what I mean? There's a lot of sports, but when sports aren't in place, then I have to figure out another way to still make that available to them on a smaller scale. And even if it means I have to go play basketball, which I'm terrible at, I will, because it really, but I think sometimes we get stuck in our routine and our schedule. And as a parent, it can be hard to remember how important some of those other things are. And really in the long run, they really can help. So that's just one thing that worked for me this summer.
Yeah, I think that's great. I heard somebody talking about how, basically when our schools shut down in March and everybody had to go remote, that parents suddenly, they had to get all these extra roles. So now suddenly parents were teachers' aides, right? And they were tutors, and they were, and in some cases you were your kid's friend or companion. If, like in my household, we only have one child at home. So when we were like in lockdown like that, we're it. Like we are the playmates and the person that she looks to do everything together. And so I think for some parents, that's a different role to be in that space all the time. In addition to all of the other roles that you might have, working and preparing meals and all the other things that you do for your family. So I think that's important. And for parents to think about what their expectations are around, how things are going to work in this new space. And I think that, routine and also flexibility is going to be really key. And for families to think about how they're going to be able to do that together, like kind of as a team. And we talked about like, we're in this adventure together. And so, how is your family team going to make it work if everybody is trying to find a little piece of the house to work in remotely, if that's what's happening, or, if they need to share technology or, some of these different kinds of challenges that might be happening for people at this point. I want to talk a little bit, I think Danielle sort of mentioned this idea that our kids have lost some opportunities, some things that, they're sort of used to, like maybe that sports or camp wasn't the experience that they thought it was going to be, or vacations. And so I wonder if we can talk a little bit about that, and sort of how for young people that loss is really important for us to have empathy around, because, even though we, for us, it might be like, it's not the end of the world that you missed a week of this. Like for them, it feels like a really big loss. Do either of you want to talk about that?
I personally feel that loss, no matter how big or how small, is something that always has to be recognized. And so don't need to dwell on it, but it's something that if your child's feeling, it should be recognized and discuss it. How do you feel about it? And then move on. And I think, like Amy said, looking at the silver lining. So we, camp was a little different, but isn't it great that you got to go to camp? I get that not all your friends were there, but you made new friends. Or we didn't get to go on that vacation this year, but perhaps next year. And look at all the different things that we got to do together instead, with hiking or whatever it is, playing basketball. It's really about acknowledging the loss or the lack of something that they were looking forward to, but then also reiterating to them the things that they also gained. And I think that that's one of the strategies that we use to build resiliency. And what a resilient town we live in. I live in and work in. So lucky.
Yep. I think, and actually that brings up another piece that's really important, which is really thinking about modeling gratitude. So as adults, how we can model gratitude for our young people, and to help them to think about the things, those silver linings, the things that they're grateful for. We talked a lot about, well, we weren't able to have as many of our friends over as we were used to maybe, but we got to know our neighbors, and because we were outside and we were talking to people, and how great is that? That's something that these are new relationships we'll always have, right? So I don't know, Amy, do you want to jump back in here on that one?
Sure. So when Danielle was talking, one thing it made me think of that I hadn't before is that we also are having this great opportunity to teach kids perspective taking and to put things in perspective. You know what I mean? I feel like many people from our generation, when we grew up, there wasn't a lot of room for us to complain. I don't think a lot of our parents wanted to validate, it just was a different time and a different generation. But so sometimes when my kids complain, I want to tell them, oh my gosh, no one would even listen to me in my house, listen to you guys. But in all fairness, I do think it's actually a great opportunity for perspective. Like, hey, it's a different perspective. Like, this didn't happen, but this did, or this could, or it will, or, you know what I mean? But to like actually sit back and just think about it, it's another kind of unique skill set that a lot of times I witnessed a lot of kids not having the ability to do, to take another person's perspective, to hear where they're coming from. And then by modeling that as an adult, which means by me validating their perspective, like this is a big deal to me, and me accepting that and giving time to it and not just poo-pooing it, I think it does go a long way with kids, but it really models that in life, in work, if someone ever shared an idea with me that maybe I didn't like, I would never shut it down because that's just not socially appropriate. But kids will. They'll immediately tell each other, nope, that's dumb, I'm not doing it. But this is an opportunity, I think, for all of us to kind of think about it and to say to them, like, I never thought of it from your perspective. I never realized how annoying it probably was to get up and be on a Google Meet at 8 a.m. You know what I mean? Or how frustrating it was that your play date that was supposed to happen March 15th didn't actually happen until July, and that's an eternity for you. So I do think, there are a lot of skill sets that are emerging from this experience for our kiddos that I'm a big believer that whenever you go through something tough, you really do grow. And I mean, you are going to be 9 times out of 10 a stronger or have acquired a new skill set down the line. So that's just another one. In listening to Danielle speak, I think that's another area for our kiddos that they're going to benefit from eventually.
Great. Yep. And we were talking a little bit before we started this about sort of this helping your kids make that transition to learning kind of each morning, and whether they are, going off to the physical building, if they're in the hybrid model, or whether they're coming to sit down at their Chromebook. And Danielle, you had a couple of thoughts about ways to help families make that feel like, okay, this is the learning space now.
Yes. So making sure, one, that you have a routine, and that routine is being met throughout the week so that there's less disruption and you don't have this going in and going out of a routine. And the other thing is that having a dedicated space where the child can sit and is comfortable to do that learning. And so it could be the kitchen table, it could be a desk in their bedroom, but making sure that they're set up and they're ready for success. So treat it as like a business meeting. And so they should come to that meeting fully dressed. They could be in loungewear, but maybe get out of your pajamas. Make sure you've had breakfast. We're not eating in front of people. It's really hard to answer questions appropriately with a mouthful of food. I'm sure your peers will appreciate that. But also just being ready for the day. And so wherever your child can be ready in that space and ready for a successful entrance into that remote learning period is important.
Great. Yeah, we are in my household, we are a walk to school house in sort of regular times. And so we actually have decided that on the days that she is home and virtually learning, we are still going to get out of our house. We are going to walk around the block, and she is going to go to school because I think that transition, is part of our routine typically. And it sort of sets, gives us a little space to have that special time together and to be able to talk during that walk, to get some physical activity in, and to sort of say like, okay, before that happens, you have to have eaten, you have to get dressed, right? And we're going to transition to our school day. We're going to have everything we need. So we have a few minutes left. I want to talk for a minute about just other healthy behaviors. We touched on some of them about, getting some physical activity, getting outside. Danielle, are there other things just in terms of, I think you spoke briefly about nutrition, things that kids are good for kids to be doing right now?
So I personally don't like the phrase social distancing. We're social beings. It's that physical space. So finding ways to interact or experience the world and still maintaining safe space in our environment, I think is very important. And so that will vary from kid to kid, age to age, family to family, but really finding ways to connect, because we've lost some connection over the past 6 months, which hopefully we're gaining that back by coming back to school and by sports starting back up. I think it's really important to find healthy things that bring you joy and bring your family joy. And by focusing on the joy and creating a sense of gratitude and looking towards those silver linings, I think is really important for mental health. But also knowing, and I'm probably segmenting into your next question, but really understanding what your resources are in your community is super important. So, we have the youth commission, we have school counselors, we have the school nurses, the teachers, and all of these adults have a vested interest in our school community, but in the community as a whole. So knowing it's okay to reach out, and you should, if your kiddo is struggling with mental health or with learning, or if your family is in need of food, that we're here to help and connect you with the appropriate resources in the community.
Great. That was actually a perfect segue as we're winding down in our time. So we have less than a minute left in theory. So I want to give each of you an opportunity to have any last thoughts. So Amy, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I just wish everyone a really awesome and successful school year. I think you're all going to be pleasantly surprised, and I really think the kids are going to love coming back. So I really hope everyone has a great year.
Great. Danielle, last thoughts? I cannot believe we're here. I'm so excited. We've been working so hard, Amy and I and Steph. I know you've been a part of it as well throughout the summer to get to this place, and I just cannot wait to see the kids and all of this. I've seen a lot of the staff, but the rest of the staff in person, I'm just excited. I can't wait.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being with us today. And I agree. I think good luck to everybody. I think we are off to a great start. There is an amazing, amazing team who are working so hard to make sure our kids have the best year possible. And please remember, there are great resources for you in our community. If you need help, don't hesitate, don't wait. If your family needs extra support, please reach out. Either the Youth Commission, the public schools, Oasis has lots of resources on our website that can help connect you to any of these types of things that you might be looking for. So get help if you need it, but have a great, great year. And good luck, everybody. Thanks. All right.